Up next in the broadcast, after North Korea's surprise offer last week to resume family reunions following the Lunar New Year holiday, Seoul proposes a flexible date in mid-February. The government issues its second movement ban on poultry since a highly virulent strain of avian influenza was discovered over 10 days ago. Shares in Seoul slumped to a 5-month low as regional stocks also took a dive on tightening credit conditions in China and the United States. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Monday, January 27th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the latest on possible advancements in inter-Korean relations. Responding to North Korea's request, South Korea has proposed a date for reunions of families separated by the Korean War.
While hopes are high of the much-anticipated event taking place, there are also looming concerns that the upcoming Seoul-Washington joint military exercises could be a major hurdle. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Families separated since the Korean War will have the chance to see each other again in mid-February if North Korea agrees to South Korea's offer made on Monday.
Considering the wishes of the separated families, we propose holding a round of family reunions at the Mount Kumgangsan resort from February 17th to the 22nd for 6 days.
This follows Pyongyang's surprise proposal on Friday that the reunions resume at a convenient time for Seoul after the Lunar New Year holiday, which falls at the end of this week. South Korea's Unification Ministry said the proposed dates are flexible and asked to hold working-level talks on Wednesday at the Truce village of Panmunjom to fine-tune the details. Pyongyang may want a later date, sometime after the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington, which begin at the end of February. Despite North Korea's repeated calls to cancel what it views as war games, South Korea made clear that the humanitarian event and the military training exercises are two separate matters.
When we selected the date, we considered the preparation process at Mount Kumgang and the urgency of holding family reunions. The joint military drills between South Korea and the U.S. were not considered.
Millions of Koreans were separated from their loved ones when the country was divided more than 6 decades ago. Around 72,000 South Koreans are on a waiting list for a chance to meet their families one last time, but it's been 3 years now since the last reunions. If the event takes place next month, 100 divided family members from each side who were selected for last year's canceled reunions will meet with their loved ones. However, a handful of these aging relatives have fallen ill since then, underscoring the urgency of resuming the long-suspended reunions. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says he would be willing to play the role of mediator for difficult inter-Korean issues, including North Korea's nuclear program.
President Rouhani made the remarks during a meeting with South Korean National Assembly Speaker Kang Chang-hee, who arrived in Tehran on Sunday to hold talks with senior Iranian officials. According to Kang's spokesman, Rouhani added that Tehran would be able to help resolve Pyongyang's nuclear issue, given Iran's experiences in dealing with Western powers over the issue. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he has no intention of backtracking from the controversial remarks he made last week on the current state of relations between Japan and China.
This while the new head of Japan's public broadcaster NHK now finds himself under fire for seemingly defending Japan's use of military sex slaves during World War II. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports.
Controversial remarks by NHK's new president, Gatsuto Momii, are being met with heavy criticism. At his inaugural news conference on Saturday, Momii said that women have been used as sex slaves by the militaries of many countries throughout history, not just Japan. He also criticized Korea for continuing to demand that Tokyo compensate Korean victims of sexual enslavement by the Japanese military during World War II. Japan argues the issue had been settled by a bilateral peace treaty. According to Japan's Asahi Shimbun, a high-ranking executive of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party said that Momi's comfort women remarks could lead to his dismissal as NHK chairman. Observers say this also is likely to affect the Japanese parliament's budget deliberations for NHK, which are due to start in March. Momi must stand before the House of Representatives when those deliberations start, and several opposition members of parliament have expressed their intent to grill him when they do. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe continues to defend his likening of current Japan-China relations to those of Britain and Germany before World War I, saying that there was nothing inappropriate about what he said. While in Davos last week, Abe explained that Britain and Germany, like Japan and China today, had a strong trading relationship, although the strategic bilateral relations did not stop the two countries from going to war in 1914. Japan has denied that Abe's comments were intended to suggest that war is inevitable, and China's foreign ministry has responded by calling the remarks inappropriate. Some say Japan's central role in the heightened tensions in Northeast Asia may play a major role in U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's decision over whether to visit Tokyo when he comes to the region next month. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
It's been a week and a half since a bird flu outbreak in the country took hold, and authorities are still trying to put a lid on its spread.
The government locked down 3 provinces on Monday in an effort to stave off the advancement, but the virus continues to creep closer and closer to the capital, Seoul. Our Shin Se-min has more.
An emergency quarantine lockdown to prevent the spread of the bird flu in the country was lifted on Monday evening. Disease prevention authorities put 3 provinces in lockdown for 12 hours on Monday while they sterilized all potential sources of avian influenza. That also included prohibiting the movement of animals, people, and vehicles from farms. However, despite these efforts, a suspected bird flu case was reported in Chungcheongbuk-do province, the first in the central province since the first AI case was confirmed on January 16th. A total of 14 ducks have died at a farm in the province since yesterday. The recent discovery is the most northern point that the virus has been detected, increasing worries that it could spread to the Seoul metropolitan area. The highly pathogenic A5N8 strain was confirmed in more ducks over the weekend, including on a farm in Korea's southern Jeollanam-do province. Fanning fears is that AI was found in chickens for the first time in Buyeo, Chungcheongnam-do province. That is especially concerning to authorities because chickens are more vulnerable to the virus and greatly outnumber ducks in the country. So far, more than 500,000 birds have been culled, with another 2.2 million expected to be slaughtered over the coming days. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
As the dust settles on one of the largest ever personal and financial data leaks in Korean history, the country's main political parties have been rolling out their own countermeasures.
They include banning all spam messages and voice phishing by the year's end. Our Kim Young-gil reports.
In the wake of the massive data leak, Korea's National Assembly plans to pass a revision to the Personal Information Protection Act at next month's extraordinary session. The revision will form a legal framework to make mobile spam messages illegal and clamp down on voice phishing, both of which are the most common forms of financial fraud. Financial firms will also be restricted from sharing their clients' personal information with their affiliates to prevent secondary damages. The leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, Kim Han-gil, has proposed the National Assembly form a special committee to find out how the data breaches were able to happen. Kim is also demanding government and presidential office officials step down to take responsibility for the leaks.
There should be a full-scale personnel shakeup at the presidential office of Cheongwade and the cabinet, as these leaks were brought on by President Park Geun-hye's uncommunicative politics.
He also urged the ruling Saenuri Party to accept his party's proposal of setting up a special committee to oversee a parliamentary probe into the matter. Kim said the government must determine the causes of the leaks and come up with preventive measures.
However, the Saenuri Party says it's opposed to Kim's proposal, as the matter can be handled by one of the National Assembly's standing committees.
A separate parliamentary probe by a special committee is unnecessary. Our top priority is to bring the situation under control. President Park has promised to hold people accountable.
At an emergency meeting with related ministers on Sunday, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won ordered the establishment of a government-wide task force and to devise follow-up measures to bring the crisis under control. Kim Hyung-gil, Arirang News.
And count President Park Geun-hye among those up in arms about the recent theft and leak of personal data.
The president didn't mince words on Monday and even chided one of her own officials for being too light on the subject. Our presidential office correspondent Jin-ju has this report.
President Park is firm about holding those involved in the massive data leak of 20 million bank and credit card users responsible.
이번에 문제가 된 세 개 카드사 이외에 다른 회사에서는 개인정보 유출이 없었는지 전 금융회사를 대상으로 철저히 조사를 하고.
Meeting with her top secretaries on Monday, the president described the leak as, quote, something that should have never happened, and ordered officials to devise measures to ensure that customers do not suffer when financial firms collect and store personal data. She also urged those firms to find other ways to identify individuals rather than relying solely on resident registration numbers, which are widely used in Korea. Other options, she says, could include the use of driver's license numbers. President Park also slammed Deputy Prime Minister Hyun Oh-seok's controversial remarks last week on the data leak, saying they only increase distrust among the public. Hyun faced strong backlash from the public and politicians after saying that, quote, foolish people always try to put the blame on others when something happens, and don't we all agree with financial firms when we provide personal information? The comments came in response to questions on whether the heads of the nation's financial watchdogs will resign over the incident.
앞으로 공직자 모두가 정말 국민을 위하고 존중하는 마음으로 임해주기를 바라면서 이런 일이 재발할 시에는 그 책임을 반드시 물을 것입니다.
President Park called for a swift passage of a bill on financial consumer protection at a provisional session of the National Assembly in February to prevent similar crises from happening again. Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Foreign experts take on the country's disastrous data breach and how the government is scrambling to enhance security. We bring in Professor Kim Bum-soo, Associate Dean of the Graduate School of Information at Yonsei University. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
Right. Professor Kim, the latest data breach may be the largest in scale, but it's not the first we have seen in the country. How prevalent are these data breaches in the country? What seems to be the cause behind such violations?
In Korea, as we know, the IT industry has been one of the top in the world as a result. I mean, data breach also is the big culprit of this IT, the strong IT country. Well, the reason why we have seen this type of problem continuously is the cultural issue on data protection. We have been focusing on security from the perspective of technology. We pay less attention on management or incentive or organizational issue on security.
So you're saying this is a people problem. We have the technology, we have the security measures in place, but it's the actual employees that are making these leakages of data happen?
Well, the people was the weakest link in this instant. And we have seen the people problem, the insider, for data breach, this type of data breach is called insider job based on data breach. Human make this type of instance. Human steals personal data. The employee working for a company steals data and report it or transfer it to somebody else outside the company.
Well, regulators have tried to ease public concerns by saying that this data is not in the hands of criminal rings. Is that true from your perspective?
Well, I like to believe in that. If the personal data is delivered to third party or secondary rings or financial institution, then it's a much bigger problem. But at this point, we don't have evidence, or we don't have strong evidence showing that this data has been used by any other party.
All right, well, the government is seeking to completely block spam text and voice phishing by the year's end, and also it's planning on imposing stiffer fines and strengthening monitoring systems. Do you think these are strong enough to rein in such a...
The government, the remedy for this type of, this incident has been the remedy that industry and professionals been looking for many years. And because of the public interest on this matter and fear and distrust on government party.
So in the case of voice phishing, if a criminal did have access to data that was leaked, it makes that call to you much more convincing. How do you protect yourself against a call when somebody has this unfair advantage against you?
Well, for that, government also have to play a role, and financial institutions have to educate individuals and inform what are the new types of scam. So if you got a phone call asking about yourself and asking more details about you, then you should set off an alarm, say, hey, there's something fishy here. If there's any URL link, internet link in SMS or MMS messages, try to avoid clicking on those links, even if it looks exciting.
Right, it's a constant struggle. All right, well, thank you so much for your time and your insight tonight.
Thank you for...
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise. Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on to Mueller trying to cover up the South's true intentions. The concerns over the weakening global economic recovery took a big bite out of Korea's benchmark index on Monday. In fact, Asian stocks across the board started off the week in decline. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The sell-off in global markets turned toward Asia on Monday, with stocks across the region plunging and trading as worries grow over slowing growth in China and signs that the U.S. will ease back on stimulus measures. Shares in Seoul slumped to a 5-month low to start the week. The benchmark Kospi dropped 1.5% to close at 1910 after dipping as low as 1899 at one point, its lowest level since August last year. Indexes in other countries met similar fates. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index dropped 1.5% to a 4.5-month low, while Japan's Nikkei dropped 2.5% to 15,000, the lowest closing level since mid-November, as the yen touched a 7-week high against the greenback. The declines first hit developing economies, with the currencies in Argentina, Turkey, and South Africa depreciating to new levels not seen in years. Experts attribute the sell-off from investors growing wary of tightening credit conditions in China as Beijing seeks to curb growth. The capital flight is also being fueled by expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will decide to taper an additional $10 billion off their bond buying programs during their 2-day policy meeting that begins on Tuesday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
World tech giants Samsung Electronics and Google have inked a patent-sharing agreement that will make them partners for the next 10 years. The deal will allow the two to share new and existing patents. Our Yu Lian reports on the industry move that emphasizes prosperity through cooperation.
Samsung Electronics and Google, which are frequently involved in patent infringement lawsuits but not against each other, have agreed to share their existing patents and those filed over the next 10 years. Without providing details, the two companies emphasized the deal will help them better avoid litigation. The head of Samsung's Intellectual Property Center, Hwang Sung-hee, said in a press release that Samsung and Google are showing the rest of the industry that there is more to gain from cooperating than engaging in unnecessary patent disputes. The sentiment was echoed by Google's Deputy General Counsel for Patents, Alan Lowe, who said through agreements like this, companies can reduce the potential for litigation and focus instead on innovation. The comment appeared to have been a direct shot at Apple, with which the two companies have been engaged in a number of multinational patent battles. Samsung is the second largest patent holder in the United States, and Google is the 11th, and the deal is expected to give both an edge in upcoming patent battles. For Google, pundits say the deal has broad implications considering its growing reach into hardware and wearables. With Samsung's hardware patent, Google can more easily expand into the wearable industry. Samsung, which seemed like it was trying to break away from Google's Android platform to develop a mobile platform of its own, will continue to work with Google in that realm. Looking ahead, the deal is also expected to lead to deeper collaboration on research and development of future projects. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
The world tennis rankings have been shaken up after an exciting Australian Open finish.
Stephen Che joins us in the Sports Center with the details. Stephen.
Hey guys, the latest rankings announced on Monday saw the Australian Open men's champion Stan Wawrinka jump into the top 5 and two familiar names tumble down the list. Wawrinka, winning his first Grand Slam in 9 seasons, jumped to 3rd, leapfrogging Juan Martín del Potro and David Ferrer, who came in at 4th and 5th respectively. Meanwhile, Andy Murray plummeted to 6th, while Roger Federer fell to 8th despite a good showing in Melbourne. And on the ladies' side, women's champ Li Na gained a notch to 3rd, pushing Maria Sharapova to 5th. And moving on to the Olympics, the South Korean bobsleigh team is preparing to go to Sochi and already have their sights on a medal in 2018. At a press conference in Pyeongchang, Gangwon-do province, the team said that it's eyeing a top 15 finish in Sochi and looking forward to a medal by the next Olympics. The team will train at Alpensia, the site of the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, until the start of the Sochi Winter Games on February 7th. Meanwhile, figure skating queen Kim Yeon-a's pursuit of historic back-to-back Olympic gold medals is a top storyline in the rink. That's according to American broadcaster NBC, who joins a long list now of international sports outlets praising Kim as the top draw in ladies figure skating at Sochi. The 23-year-old, who shattered Olympic scoring records at the Vancouver Games in 2010, is the favorite to repeat for gold. And heading to the greens, it was a great weekend for golf, especially for Scott Stallings, who took home the trophy at the PGA's Farmers Insurance Open. Now, Stallings nabbed his 3rd tour win, ending at 9 under par at Torrey Pines, while Chae Young-ju or KJ Choi ended up sharing 2nd place at 8 under. For the ladies, American Jessica Korda won the Bahamas LPGA Classic, with Chen Ayeon and Lydia Go placing inside the top 10. And ending off on a down note, an anti-World Cup protest rocked the city of São Paulo, Brazil, and more are expected in the run-up to the big tournament. Over 1,000 protesters gathered for the largely peaceful march until they lit a car on fire, broke the windows of several banks, and clashed with police. We can expect more of this in the future, as this was merely the first of the Operation Stop the World Cup campaign staged by the activist group Anonymous. And that does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
It was a spring-like winter day here in Korea, but tomorrow we will need an umbrella.
For more, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, what's in store for us tomorrow?
Good evening, Sean and Ji-hye. Well, there looks to be light passing snow showers in the central regions tomorrow morning. Now, on and off snow showers are forecast over the Lunar New Year holiday. Thursday, which is the first day of the holiday, will be a drizzly one. However, things will clear up on Lunar New Year's Day, and we'll wrap up with the holiday, that is, with sprinkles on Saturday. As for the current conditions, the central regions will gradually be at the edge of a high-pressure system from the West Sea. Now, tomorrow, temperatures will remain above the seasonal average range, and those of you in Gangwon-do province can expect a centimeter of snow. Please also keep in mind that a strong wind watch has been issued there as of 8 p.m. As for tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at 0 degrees with a high of 4. Meanwhile, Daegu and Busan hit the low teens. Moving on to other regions, Jeju makes it to 11 degrees, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang peak at 8 and -2 degrees, respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll see you again after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Yuji Hain, Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.